Right, today is the 9th of June 2019, and we're going to look at SD 47.16, chapter 16, Gawesi Sutta, the discourse on Gawesi. So here the word Gawesi is a name. Gawesi can just be a noun. It means someone who seeks. Now it is very interesting because the word Gawesi is formed from go, meaning cattle, cow, plus AC. AC means to seek cows. So because cows are regarded as precious, as valuable. So if the cow is lost, this cow herd will always go and look for this cow. So Gawesi literally means a cow seeker, but then here it means someone who seeks the truth, who seeks what is good, who seeks awakening. And it's a name for a person. In fact, we will learn that this Gawesi, he was a layman. Not from our time. He was a layman from the past Buddha's time, the time of Kassapa Buddha. So let's find out why he is featured here. No? So the discourse on Gawesi. Right? So we must be sure we know the background before we translate the title. Right? So it is not a sutta to Gawesi, here sutta on Gawesi. Yeah? A5.180 is keeping the precepts leads to spiritual development or spiritual fulfillment. Actually, it's more than just this topic. It's about fellowship. It's about when you have a good leader, there are also good followers, as we will see in a while. Yeah? Okay, so now, as usual, you see here there's a bit of introduction and some notes, and then there is the suttas. Right? The translation comes after that. But when I first translated, I was not sure how to arrange, because another way is you can put the notes at the end. So you have what are called introductory notes. They don't use the word front notes, but they do have the word end notes. And of course, there are footnotes. Now, I prefer footnotes because they are very useful for teachers. Now, when someone teaches, if you forget, just look at the bottom, all right? And I used to play tricks with my students, remember, in US class, when you come to a very difficult passage, I ask them, do you know what this means? Everybody will kind of look down, Then I say, oh, just look at the footnote, look at the number, it's all there. The information is all there. So this is where I try to provide all the essential, all the necessary details to help the student, to help the teacher. Of course, it's very important to read up, prepare before teaching, and I always do that because we tend to miss out things otherwise. Because of the style of education, we depend on books today. We are very reliant on the written text. In the West, in the Buddha's time, or you find some of those old school teachers, especially those who follow the forest meditation tradition, you find they can just stop offhand. Now, there are advantages from such teachers because they speak from personal experience. Okay? And we say they speak from personal insight. So that is one way they are valuable. However, they do have some handicaps in the manner of speaking, although they're not really handicaps from the point of view of a practitioner. I mean, what I mean here is, if you have a scholar who studies the text very carefully and compares them, you find there are other aspects of the suttas we can learn. For example, we begin to know the background of the sutta. Roughly when was it taught? To whom was it taught, and then what was the attending conditions at that time, There are certain references Buddha made. Why did the Buddha make those references? In fact, many of those sentences, phrases, even words that the Buddha uses are very often connected with the teachings of those days. Like the Upanishads, for example. Of course, the Buddha is not promoting the Upanishads, the Buddha actually is countering all these teachings because the Upanishads talk about the soul and self and permanence, things like that. So the Buddha would use these terms and words and give them a new meaning so that they are meaningful to us, to the practitioner, to the follower, right? This is a very common attitude, very common activity you see happening in living religions where the teacher would kind of introduce new ideas to outside words. Or I use the word natural adaptation. Right? The Buddha would naturally adapt many of these ideas already existent in the Buddha's time. He would give it a new meaning. Right? A good example is the ancient Indians believe in Brahma, the high God. So the Buddha said, yeah, okay, you can use the word Brahma, but Brahma here means divine life. You live this godly life. You don't worship the God. You don't need to go to heaven to be divine. Right here, when you practice the divine qualities, you practice the Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, you attain that level here and now. Right? So this is a very good example where you see the Buddha naturally adapts those old ideas of theistic supremacy and so on to practical daily personal practice. Okay, so it's good to know the background of the sutta. All right. Now here we have only two people in this sutta: the Buddha and Ananda, talking to each other. Okay, so let's look at the sutta. What page is it? Your book 160. Gawesi Sutta, the discourse on Gawesi, A 5.180. Now you notice I always mention the sutta number. This is so that you will know where to look up for yourself. Very often I get inquiries. They tell me, oh, I went to this teacher, he mentioned this sutta and this happened. Do you know where it is? So, of course, very often I could get them, but not always, because sometimes we can miss out certain vital points. So it's good to know the number, either the title. Titles, there are sometimes more than one title, but anyway, still we have a hold on the topic, a hold on the text, and the numbers also help. Okay. In fact, nowadays you have lots of indexes. I just discovered this monk who put together the dictionary of Pali proper name. It is a monk called Pesala. He also has done. Apparently, he has indexed all the suttas in the Sangyutta, arranged according to a particular order. And that's going to be very helpful to us. Of course, he only gives one name, so he has followed the names given in one particular tradition, not sure which one, either Sinhalese or Burmese. But all that we need to do, we use, because now it's all computerized, this MS Words is very easy. We just need to update those. The list, so it's very easy. So we have that index. So if you need the index, if I'm still alive and you have people to contact from the Sutta Discovery group, you can ask for this index of suttas, which will help you to locate the titles very quickly. All right, so the sutta starts with the Buddha. The Buddha smiles. At one time, the Blessed One was walking on the tour of, or was peregrinating in Kosala. Now Kosala is in northern India. Okay, this is one of the big kingdoms with a large community of monks. Okay, here of course we're not sure how many, a few hundreds at least. The Blessed One, while traveling along the high road, saw a large sal grove in a certain place. Seeing it, he came down from the road. Now, notice the sentence structure here. He came down from the road. So now, you see, we sometimes you may wonder, how come in English we say the highway, the high road, right? So the word high literally means high, higher than the general level of the grounds around. I think one reason is to prevent flooding, things like that, right? So here the Buddha comes down from the highway, from the high road. So the Blessed One approached the sal grove, entered it, and when he reached a certain place, smiled. So we very often see when the Buddha passes by a place where there are a beautiful park with trees, they normally will stop there and rest there. And especially there's a river there also. So here, section 4, okay? Then it occurred to the Venerable Ananda. What now is the reason for the Blessed One's smiling? The Tathagatas do not smile without a reason, right? So here the Buddha, Ananda is very curious. Right? This smiling is not exactly humor, it's more of a memory coming back, and he's very happy about it, okay? And it's also a signal to the world outside there is this Dhamma teaching which is coming. Then the Venerable Ananda said to the Blessed One. Now notice here, the Buddha smiles, okay? But you have to respond to this smile. Right? So Ananda is kind of present on our behalf. So he's the one who responds. He asks the Buddha, why are you smiling? Well, he can read the Buddha's mind. So he asks, and that's where is the occasion for a teaching. What now, Bhante, asked Ananda, is the reason for the Blessed One smiling? The Tathagatas do not smile without a reason. Okay, this is one situation where there is a reason. Okay? However, we do see in the suttas mentioned that the Buddha has a kind of sort of permanent smile, if you like. A kind of pleasant look. So you see in the Buddha's images, there's always this happy look on the Buddha's face, right? So because the Buddha is happy, right? But here, a smile is much broader than just that sweet look on his face, if you like. So now Ananda starts by asking this question for our benefit. Now the Buddha starts his teaching. It says, section 6. Once upon a time, Ananda, there was at this place a city, densely populated, its people wealthy and prosperous. Now, Ananda, the Blessed One Kassapa, the worthy Arahat, fully self-awakened one, lived depending on that city, right? So, here, the Buddha stopped in that sal grove because that place was previously the city where the Kassapa Buddha lived. So this is the Buddha just before our time. There were 3 other Buddhas before our own Buddha, and then there's one more to come. Section 8. Now Ananda, there was a lay follower, Upasaka. Now this Upasaka is an English word here, so there are no diacritics. Pali is Upasaka, okay? Of that Blessed One, Kassapa. And then, but he did not fulfill moral conduct. Right. So this is a starting point. Okay, there's this layman, he didn't do anything, didn't keep the precepts, okay? Section 9. Ananda, on account of the lay follower Gawesi, 500 lay followers were inspired to confess in other words, have faith, and they too did not keep moral conduct, right? So we see Gawesi here as someone very popular, charismatic. He's the kind who attracts people. People just kind of find him a good leader. Right? So he's the kind of person. But he started off by, you can say, a very playful person and not really serious about precepts and so on. So that's the starting point, all right? Okay, so now we begin to see this very interesting Dhamma growth, section 10. Then Ananda, it occurred to the lay follower Gawesi. Indeed, I have been of great benefit to these 500 lay followers, leading and inspiring them. But because I myself do not fulfill moral conduct, these 500 lay followers too do not do so. Thus, we are on the same level. In no way do I surpass them. Now, let's do something more. Now, this word, let's do something more, is very important in Buddhist practice. No? It means don't stop. Don't stop your practice. You got to build up your practice. There's always something more. Until you reach nirvana, then there's no more. Okay. Then Ananda, the lay follower Gawesi, approached the 500 lay followers and said to them, "From this day forth, venerables," notice he calls his friends venerables. "Remember me as one who fulfills moral conduct," keeping the precepts now. Okay. So here you have this very interesting episode. It shows Gawesi, someone with leadership qualities. He is kind of quite free and easy, the impression that we get here. And he has these 500 followers who also follow what he's doing. So they also relax like him. But he's quite thoughtful. Okay? So he surveys the situation. He says, okay, I have these 500 friends, but they're also doing nothing like me. So we are the same, right? So let me be a little better than them. So how can I be better than them, right? So he has this idea that as a leader, he should set an example, right? So he starts by keeping the precepts. Section 13. Then Ananda, it occurred to the 500 lay followers, "The noble Gawesi is indeed of great benefit to us, leading and inspiring us. Now that the noble Gawesi will fulfill moral conduct, how much more for our part? From this day forth, noble Gawesi." So then these 500 lay disciples told Gawesi, says, from this day forth, noble Gawesi, please remember these 500 lay followers too, as those who fulfill moral conduct. So here you see the followers following the example of the leader, right? So this is where it's a very important reminder here, timely reminder that if you are a Buddhist leader, Buddhist teacher, if you go to a Buddhist center, people look up to you. Okay, if you go there long enough, so you have to set a good example for others. Because if you don't, then don't expect others to follow the Buddha's teaching, right? So we all have to set this example. Right? So this is the first step that Gawesi does. 15. Then Ananda, it occurred to the lay follower Gawesi, indeed, I have, so he says, okay, I have been teaching this, my friends, my followers, they've been following my example, that's good, but still we can do more, right? What more can I do? So 16, he says, because I myself fulfill moral conduct, these 500 lay followers too do so. Then Ananda, the lay follower Gawesi, approached the 500 lay followers and said to them, from this day forth, venerables, remember me as a brahmachari, a celibate practitioner, living apart, abstaining from coupling, from sexual intercourse, the way of the village. So he kind of adds an extra precept, right? So of course, first you have the 5 precepts, which we have just recited. But here in the second stage, Gawesi decides to upgrade the third precept, right, from Kame Sumichachara Viramani to Abramacharya Viramani. So in other words, here, what Gawesi is doing is preparing himself to go deeper into the renunciant's life. As a layperson, mind you, he's going to go deeper into meditation, in other words. Right? So now, understandably, I think this group of people, they're not very young people, they're probably already family people. So they kind of decide to take things further in their practice of the Dhamma, okay? To be celibate. Right? You find this similar situation in the story of Sakra, Lord of the Devas. Even when he was a young man, I mean, he had 4 wives, as a young man. Then he and his 33 friends, they started doing public works. They decide, they call this the clearing a path to heaven. Okay, by doing this, they hope to be reborn in a happy state. After a while, they decided that they to have nothing to do with women, with families, and so on. But their 4 wives are living with them. So one day we'll talk about that very interesting story of Sakra and his wives. But here we have Gawesi, who sets the example by living this celibate life. So understandably, the 500 lay followers also do the same. They follow his example. So they announce to him, they say, Noble Gawesi, we too would like to follow the celibacy precept. Now notice here, they're doing together in a group, so it's much easier in this. They're helping each other, and they're also practicing. It's not that just being celibate in itself is a good thing. It's rather, being celibate means you are restraining your physical senses, that's your body, your speech, so that you can go deeper into meditation, which will speed up the attaining of the path, at least stream-winning. All right, so now what next? Okay, look at section 20 now. Then Ananda, it occurred to the lay follower Gawesi. He says, okay, I've done all these good things. I've been an example for my friends. I have been keeping to the precepts, moral conduct. I have upgraded myself with the precepts. I've taken the brahmachari precepts, become a celibate practitioner. Now what should I do now? Okay, so section 22. Then Ananda, the lay follower Gawesi, approached the 500 lay followers and said this to them. From this day forth, Venerables, remember me as a single meal taker who abstains from food at night, refrains from taking food at the wrong time. So this time adds 1 more precept, it becomes 6 precepts. It's approaching the 8 precepts, if you like. So 1 meal a day. So what's going on here, you might ask? So it's quite clear here that this layman and his 500 friends, they are living a kind of what is called a contemplative life. Okay, so they just need 1 meal a day. Right? Now, if you are doing mostly meditation and you are not you're not a full-time layman doing work, running a family, and so on. You don't need so much food. So, in other words, this also is cutting down savings, money, and keeping yourself healthy. And also, you find that it's easier to practice with just enough food. Okay, so the 500 lay followers also follow his example and say, okay, we too will follow this precept of 1 meal a day, right? So notice here, this 1 meal is taken anytime between dawn and noon, right? So just 1 meal. In fact, most of the monks today, they take 2 meals. So one breakfast and the other one is lunch. No? But here, traditionally, they only take 1 meal. Okay, so now you see this progression is very interesting. You're wondering what next, right? So Gawesi begins to think, okay, I have practiced moral conduct, keeping the precepts, I'm keeping the celibacy precept, I'm keeping the food rule, the food precept of taking only 1 meal a day. So this is over time, it's not sudden, you know. So now he decides to upgrade himself further. Look at section 28. Look at 27. That's 27, the Buddha tells Ananda. Then Ananda, the lay follower Gawesi, approached the Blessed One, Kassapa, etc. The title is given, and said this to the Blessed One: May I, Bhante, receive the going forth in the Blessed One's presence and receive the ordination. So Ananda, the lay follower Gawesi, received the going forth in the presence of the Blessed One. And so he became a monk. Now he did this alone. This is very interesting. Okay, he did this alone, and he practiced. And if you look at the next section, 29, 30, you will see that it actually says he becomes an arahat, right? So birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, done what is to be done. There is no more of this state of being. So notice you have this person, Gawesi, who started off not keeping the precepts at all, then he has people follow him, then he decided to keep the precepts and then slowly build himself up, and now he's an arahat. So question now is, what happens to his followers? Okay, this is section 32. Then Ananda, it occurred to the 500 lay followers. The noble Gawesi is indeed of great benefit to us, leading and inspiring us, right? So they decided to follow his example too. So they went to the Buddha also, and section 35, may we, Bhante, receive the going forth in the Blessed One's presence and receive the ordination. So now you see all these 500 lay followers also becoming monks. Section 35. Then Ananda, it occurred to the monk Gawesi. 36, section 36. I can obtain at will, easily obtain without any difficulty, obtain joy of liberation. Oh, that these 500 monks too would get the same thing, this joy of liberation. Now, what is this joy of liberation? Here, it is the joy which is stressed here. So you can say on a simple level, if you look at how the dedication of Gawesi progresses, it is the attaining of jhanas, right? So it is a very good example here how someone prepares himself for deep meditation. First they keep the precepts, and then they cut down on food, and then they cut down on relationship with the world. They become less worldly, they're more celibate, totally celibate, not more celibate, to dedicate their senses to meditation, and then they cut down on food. All this helps, okay? And then have 1 meal, things like that. All this to help in terms of attaining jhanas. And then in the case of Gawesi, he becomes a monk, right? Because after all, there is no reason for him not to, right? Let me just briefly mention why all these conditions are very good for attaining arahathood, right? So this we're talking about layman here, okay, who has become a monk and become an arahat. For lay people, if you have a family and you are running a business, you are working, you can still practice, right? But you are very much involved with the body, so that there is this limit to your meditation experience, in other words. But you can work towards attaining the first 2 paths, okay, that is stream winning and one's return. But in the case of Gawesi, he's probably someone who has a lot of time. He probably doesn't have any more responsibilities, so he decided to go all out. He ordains and he goes into meditation, right? So here, in order to attain jhanas, he has to make sure the senses, the five senses, do not distract him. It is the five senses that keeps us in the world, that holds us back in the world. So in order to rise above the world, and that's what jhana does, you actually get out of the world, so to speak, the daily life of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thoughts. He has to restrain himself completely, all right? Because when you indulge in sensual pleasures, you all the time, your energy is going up, right? So it's very, you have to really give all, so to speak, right? So it's very difficult for the mind to focus on itself. So here, in other words, to prepare himself for jhana, for deep meditation, he has to shut his five doors, keep all this energy within himself, calm them down so that they do not distract him, they do not take over his life. And then when the five physical senses are totally settled, that is the real meaning of renouncing the world. Only when you have shut down the five senses, you have really renounced the world. Right? But that's only the beginning. Okay? Then the next step is to cultivate the mind. And the mind opens up a new path, so to speak. And that's the one that leads to nirvana, because that brings awakening. So this is exactly what Gawesi did. So you can see here, by being a good leader, he shows all these examples that a lay practitioner should do, and in the end, even renounced the world, and his friends also did the same thing. And in due course, they all go on practicing. So let's look at section 14. So in this way, Ananda, these 400 monks, with Gawesi as the leader, striving ever higher, ever subtler, realized the unsurpassed truth, unsurpassed bliss of liberation. Now here it means that the 500 monks, 500 friends, they also became monks, they also practiced meditation, and they all became arahats. Right? It seems so easy those days, right? So this is the story the Buddha tells Ananda. It is a story of this Gawesi, who was a lay disciple of the Buddha Kassapa, who had 500 friends. Now we come to the reason why the Buddha tells this story, and that is in the section 41 and 42, the Buddha's exhortation. Notice section 41, the Buddha says, therefore. Okay? So once you see this word, you know the Buddha is changing gear, is addressing Ananda, addressing us. So you can put your name there if you like. So therefore, whatever your name is, you put there. You should train yourself thus. I shall strive ever higher in the ever subtler or more refined, okay, to realize the unsurpassed liberation. That is nirvana, of course. Thus, Ananda, you should train yourself, right? So instead of Ananda, you can put your name there, okay? So the Buddha is addressing you directly. This is the way you should train yourself. What is this way? You may start with nothing, being playful, worldly, then realize, I don't need to be like that. It's only taking me the wrong way. Why don't I take it one step further? So keep the precepts, right? And then after you've kept the precept, you say, okay, that's good. So why don't I take it one step higher? Why do I keep the celibacy precept? And then you find that when you keep the celibacy precept, you're so full of energy, and you say, well, I don't need so much food. Let me just take 1 meal a day. And then from there, you go on to meditation, And if you are ready, you can become a anagarika or become a monk or a nun if you like. And then from there, you attain the various stages of the path, right? So this is a story of Gawesi, which the Buddha specially tells us for our benefit through Ananda. Okay? So do read the sutta for your own practice and progress.